And I felt so easy.
And I talk like that. I hope I'm not going to clip. Hello, hello, hello. It all sounds good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, I can even have it over here if I wanted to.
Check, check, check.
I won't keep these on though. All right, that's it. That's how we intro.
That's it.
Right away, let's get into it. My friend Bard here, older gentleman.
Older.
It's okay. It's okay. He's an older, more experienced gentleman. That makes more sense.
Sure,
More
sure.
experience. So I wanted to sit and talk with you. But before we start talking, I decided that I want to do the plugs at the beginning.
Very good.
So let's talk about Empathy Rising
Okay.
and tell us about it. What's going on with Empathy Rising?
Empathy Rising is a blog that I started 4 years ago. So I had gone to England for a boarding school trauma workshop. So I went to boarding school when I was young. When I was 6 years old, I went to a British boarding school.
Yeah.
And only about 5-6 years ago, after all of the work I'd done, self-healing work that I'd done for all of these years, I had ignored this super obvious component of sort of my trauma.
Sure.
And so came upon online, my ex actually came upon information about boarding school trauma. So I ended up going to England over a period twice, March and May of 4 years ago. And after I went for the first session, I came back and I had this idea, had been percolating for a while, about starting a website, a blog, something like that.
Yeah.
And it began with the Gian Gomeshi case, actually.
Gian Gomeshi.
Do you remember Gian Gomeshi, the CBC radio host guy?
No.
Sexual abuse against lots of women.
No.
Q. Do you remember the show on CBC? Did you know that? Anyway, so that verdict came in, and I was very curious about it, and something piqued my interest, and I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had a feeling that the judge, who had been very, very tone deaf in his judgment, I had a feeling about him. So I checked him out, and he had gone to Upper Canada College.
Okay.
And he had boarded there. So this is a man who's probably 65 or 70. I don't remember how old he was. And so it made sense to me, his tone and manner and all of that. And I ended up writing an article on the case and how the ins and outs of it, and connecting it with a boarding culture that underpins all of the Anglo cultures and really much of the world because of the British Empire and having been all over the world, so that Anglo-British influence is massive all around the world, and boarding school and boarding culture is one of the foundations and pillars of that. So that's how it started, and and the main aspect of it is me on a lifelong journey to reconnect with my heart and for softening, because how my trauma manifested in me is with a lot of anger. So from the moment, from the time I was 19, literally every day examining and wondering why I'm reacting the way I am, why my life looks like the way it does.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's kind of how it all began, and then it got
What age were you when you started examining that, thinking about
19.
that? 19.
And the reason for that was because my father at that point, he had just read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was one of the very first self-help books that came
Really?
out. That was 1989.
Really?
Yeah. And so he read that, it made an impact on him, and he gave it to me, and he inscribed in it, "This is the best present I've ever given you." And he told me that he was concerned for me and my life and the trajectory it was going because of this sort of rage and impatience I had in me.
True.
So I read that book because I had so much respect for my father. And that started my self-reflection and healing journey, which probably by the time I was maybe 26, 27, I'm 50 now, I thought that I had was pretty much kind of 85% of the way there, which was hilarious.
You could have been. It's just that other 15% takes, decades.
You're exactly right. That's the excruciating 15%. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Huh. So it's the empathy rising because your empathy was rising as you were discovering
Empathy
yourself?
rising, which is connected with the reconnection with the heart, which in so many of us has really been calcified, and so much personal and generational trauma from when we were young, and generational what's been passed down. And so for a lot of us, what we've done unwittingly is we've put a wall up to protect our hearts, but then we don't realize that there's a wall there, and that wall protects our hearts, but it also prevents us from feeling and from loving and from having joy, and being connected to our intuition and deeper wisdom and all of that.
Yeah, I was actually, I think it was in a meditation session, but like I came up with the whole thing, like people are made of like hurt and shields. It's like you get hurt at like your core self, call it your inner child, whatever, and
Shield
then you
goes
make a
up
shield.
immediately.
You get hurt somewhere
It's automatic.
else, shield, and then all of a sudden you're this person who is less of a person and more of a defense mechanism, just covering that little kid, that child, and you just don't want that child to get hurt anymore.
And what happens when there's an entire world where most people are engaging from that place with each other?
Yeah. What happens? What's happening now?
Well, it's all become intensified now, but yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we won't get it. I remember you said you don't want That's why I was thinking about it. I'm like, no, I won't go there.
We can touch into things, it's okay.
But also, I know there's empathy rising, but you even mentioned to me brotherly accompaniment.
Yes.
Did I say it right? Jesus, I couldn't say that word. Thought I'd mess it up. But yeah, tell us about that.
It's a bit of a mouthful. Maybe I should try to find a more, something that rolls off the tongue more. But within Empathy Rising, I offer something called brotherly accompaniment.
Yeah.
And there's a long history of my life of how that's come about, through my own investigations into my own healing and trauma. But I've also been a big brother, like Big Brothers of Toronto, to Sean for 17 years. So we became connected when he was 8. So he's now 25, 26.
It's amazing.
And so there are a lot of people, and I was focusing on men for a long time, but really I see that it's gender is not really relevant. There's a lot of alienation and isolation and confusion, and I feel like I've arrived at a point where I can be of some benefit to some people who are starting to understand that really the answer is to connect with their heart again, but they may not have the mirroring around them in their lives through their family and or friends. So then I say, brother, sister, come this way, let's hang, let's chat, and start to break it down, and in some really fundamental ways, to get into generational patterning, to really start to recognize what we're doing and why, and how do we break through.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big thing to think about. That's what I've been questioning. I started around 19 too, when I started questioning things. Like I say all the time, it was because of a podcast called Theater of the Mind, and they were talking about the chakras, and that was the first time I heard about a chakra and remote learning or remote viewing. Like being able to do stuff like that, and psychic ability. It just opened my world. She was like a female Joe Rogan. She was amazing. She's so good. Kelly Howell. And yeah, ever since then, I've been trying to figure out why I am like this. Why?
Well, it's interesting you mention things like remote viewing and all of that, because the way that our world has gone, the way how we think life is has been placed within very tight parameters. And so a lot of people think that life is really between that and that, and maybe that's actually 10% of it, and there's so much more going on
There is.
that we have not been made aware of.
Yeah.
It's not in our schooling. It really has to do with more of the ethereal, the nebulous, things that can't be quantified, and so they can easily be discarded and disrespected. But the answers, quantum physics has gotten into a lot of those things,
Yep.
and has opened the door, because as if the only thing that's legitimate is science, and our intuition and feelings, unless they can be quantified, are somehow not legitimate.
Yeah.
This is very problematic because
True.
we keep going down the scientific route. Science is a wonderful tool, but the funny thing is, the more you look at science, often the things you think, you assume the science. When you actually look into the science, you see that the science behind that thing which we assume, it does not fulfill even its own
Like
scientific parameters.
Yeah,
exactly.
What you would need
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Yeah. Who was? Somebody was talking about something like that. Talking about. I don't think it was. I think it was maybe gravity. And they were talking about how it's like more of a theory than anything.
Well, everything's a theory.
Yeah, and they went into this whole thing of like that's a theory and like it was a whole thing. But let's get into plugs first. Photography. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I mean, I'm also a photographer. I'm a writer, a photographer.
Yeah.
It's been interesting because for a long time I separated my photography as my work from my artistic endeavors. I've been a screenwriter. I've made some short
Really?
films, and so forth. But I've been a portrait photographer, so I've done school photography, baby, maternity,
Yeah.
corporate event photography, baptisms, anything to do with people. And it's been a part of my learning because I've constantly been engaging very directly with all kinds of people from all walks of life. And I realized in the last few years how much of a benefit that's been to me learning about myself,
Yep.
of seeing universal themes running through all kinds of people, of seeing similarities between people of all sort of races and religions
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful career in which I got to be my own boss,
True.
because I don't think I could have worked for other people. I would have been fired repeatedly. So I made my own business 18 years ago, and that's still there, although under the current circumstance, my
Yeah,
business may be dead in the water. So we got to see what happens with that.
Well, I mean, as long as you exist, it's still there. It's just what are people willing to do, I guess. You know?
Yeah, but I'm
like
primarily
maybe you'll have to invest in like a zoom lens, and you'll just have to stay
from way
very,
far
very-
away. Yeah.
Oh man! But one interesting thing you just said is why the separation between the creative outlet and photography?
Well, that was, I wouldn't call it a mistake. I think that was the process of me really integrating everything. Everything is relevant, right? And I think we can have the habit of creating these artificial separations, and it's a part of this, 4,000 years of patriarchy, hierarchy, compartmentalization, where we create separations as if that thing is not related to that thing, and everything is fully related. It's within an ecosystem.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Wow. So yeah, I don't think it'll be dead in the water. Things are coming back. We're coming back.
It doesn't matter. I'm just going with the flow of it, and I'm focused more on empathy rising, and because there are major shifts that are happening for humanity as we speak, and things are going to be happening that I believe are going to twist people's heads. It's going to be revelations and are going to happen that are going to make some serious changes. They're going to be both disconcerting and liberating.
Yeah.
And so I think there'll be a place for hopefully what I have to offer on that front and the work I've done.
Yeah. 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 Just thinking about all the things that could happen. But you know what? I want to jump over because I had this order, but you just brought up like right away. You're just like it doesn't matter, just going with the flow. So I want to talk about letting go.
Mm,
Okay.
surrender.
And yeah, like how did you learn how to do that? Like right here, it just says how do you do it? Because you seem to be really good at it. Like if I bring up certain things, you'll just be like, yeah, that's fine. Like it's just.
I'm good at it, and I've also been atrocious at it. That's how. And it's constant self-examination of when I've been terrible at it.
Okay.
Why? Why? Beyond focusing on the other person and creating justifications for why I've behaved badly, let's say.
Yeah.
And so it's
Keep going.
it's a never-ending process of surrender, and really the last 4 months have taken it to the next level, because the crazier things get and the stranger things get, the paradoxical opportunity is to surrender more, because if we align with the heightened fear and anxiety, good things are not going to come of that.
No.
For us and for our circle and for our community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the short answer. But it's really hard work, because if we're doing it consciously, we're constantly becoming aware of our ego and the ways that we hold on to things which are there because of our trauma, and then our blind spots of what we don't see until we finally see them.
Yeah.
And there's no arrival. It is the surrender will be happening until the day I die. I know that the place I'm in now, or I feel, I mean, some incredible work has been done.
Yeah.
But it's never ending. The layers keep coming. So there's no plateau where it's like, oh, you know, it's all good now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
True. So at first you were really bad at it.
Oh, I was terrible at it.
Yeah. What are some things that you couldn't let go, or that had trouble letting go? Had that iron grip, I've heard you mention.
I don't know. I think I'd get caught up in, you know, some people's trauma gets embedded in a way where everything goes in, where
Yeah.
you kind of become a masochist and you take everything on.
Yeah.
For
that's
me,
what I do.
it turned into anger, and so everything was always being pushed out. And I would always be looking for reasons why other people are wrong, and why other people are doing things to make me become angry and react in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of damage that I've done to you know, friendships, family, and all of that. But I will say that all of those are also a co-creation. So it always takes two to tango.
Yeah, you talk about this a lot. Yeah, let's talk about that. The co-creation thing. Do you always say, what were you saying? You're always the energetic match of
Exactly.
whatever is going on.
Yeah, whatever is in front of us, we're an energetic match. We're an energetic match right now, and how we came into each other's lives, like 3.5 years ago we met, and we connected. And so every single experience we have, every person we meet, every customer service person we talk to, everyone in the family, every relationship is a mirror reflecting back who we are, in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Except often when we see the bad and the ugly, we often want to be in avoidance and denial that thing is a reflection of not exactly the same thing. It doesn't mean that it presents itself exactly in that way in me. It means there is an aspect of me which may present itself very differently, but has the same underlying dysfunctional energies involved. So then the more conscious we become, the more we see those as opportunities. It's very hard to get to that point where we're in a situation where we're taken out of our game and we're uncentered, to as quickly as possible do whatever it takes to come back to center, do something that makes you feel good, and so forth, and then to ask the question, well, why did I go to that place? And the answer is never to look at the other person. Oh, because that person said that. If that thing was not within me, I wouldn't be reacting to it. But that personal responsibility is one of the hardest things for most of us to accept.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's because you can't be the victim if you do that.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, you
And
take
most
that
of
out
us put ourselves in a position in that moment of being a victim.
Of course.
And it's because most of us have been victimized in our lives in a variety of ways. So one of the things was when I found the boarding school trauma information, and then I read a book on boarding school, the most famous book on it, and I started to look into it. When Empathy Rising started, right away I recognized that the way that that trauma has manifested in me, I suddenly saw it everywhere. I saw it as being universal as opposed to my trauma being special. And so that's when the healing can go to a deeper level, is when we start to recognize our pain and our shame and our guilt and our humiliation, that it's not special. And almost anyone, if you actually sat down with them and if they revealed themselves to you, including people who say, oh yeah, life has been fine and my childhood was fine. There's a lot of denial in some people, but if you were able to get underneath, you would see that a lot of that is out there. Yeah.
It's very true. Very true. I didn't realize that myself until I re-met my father at like 20. It was just after like me starting to question things. It was around 22, 23, or maybe like around 22. I re-met him, and then I got less angry with him because I started seeing, like I started understanding. I'm like, oh, I get it. Like you're messed up. Like that's what it is. Like you're not just you don't just not
it's
care.
Not on purpose. It's not malicious.
Yeah, you're just a little fucked up. Like you just can't stop doing certain things.
And that's the best he could do.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so from a third party position, one can look at some people and say, that's the best you can do, and the answer is yes.
Yeah.
That is
100%. And also it's like looking at it and then looking at like fatherhood. I'm scared to death of it. So I don't know where he was. Like if it's something that I'm scared of, then I'm sure he was scared too. And I don't know.
Who's been prepared for fatherhood? I mean, my father, God bless his heart, we never had one conversation about that. So you think about the schooling, again, the school system is unfortunately very limited.
Of course.
Doesn't really give you life skills and so forth. And where is the teaching? Those are the kind of teachings that used to be a part of a village, and you would have the elders and the wise people and the grandmothers and the grandfathers who you would get these kind of teachings. There'd be initiations, and you would, okay, here it is, here is what it is to be a man, and so forth. But a lot of us were left to our own devices, and then so you're manufacturing it as you go along.
Yeah.
It's like you're just like experimenting, constantly screwing up, and then while you're doing that, not knowing what the hell you're doing, and then people are looking at you going, like that, and you're like, oh, I
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah, it was something else to re-meet and see that person. And then as soon as I saw that in him, then all of a sudden I was able to see that in my mom, and like you said, it became a universal thing.
Yeah.
I was able to start looking at people as, taking them off the pedestal of like, this person's this asshole and they're doing this. It's like, no, they're just like really hurt. They're hurt. They're just like you. The same way that you get hurt, they get hurt. Like the same shit, and maybe even worse.
And that's where the compassion and forgiveness starts to come in.
Yeah.
The most challenging people to do that with are our family, and especially our mother and father.
Yeah.
But when we can do that, which is probably the hardest work, that's when we can start to be compassionate and forgive ourselves, because in the end, what's happened from a young age when we have been either abused or abandoned or betrayed, often unwittingly, is that when you then cut off from your heart in order to protect yourself from feeling the abandonment and the betrayal, you're betraying yourself. You're betraying your own feelings in doing that. So really the end game is always the self-reflection and looking at yourself and the self-forgiveness, because when we can do that, that's when we can do that with the world. That's when we can look around and judgment reduces and the nuance increases, and you see that everything that everyone is doing, they have a very good reason for it. You may think that reason is stupid or ridiculous. Assuredly, their life experience has led them to a decision in which that's what they're doing.
That's the way.
Yeah. And so then to say to that person, the fuck are you doing? Right? That person is doing it genuinely. So then, then they get their back up.
Of course.
And then, it's totally counterproductive.
Yeah. Man, letting go. Because that's something that it's hard. Like the bigger things have been easier. Things like little conversations, I have trouble letting go of sometimes.
And then rehash and thinking what you could have said. Oh my God, torture.
Yeah, and I'm somebody who talks to myself, so I'm saying it out loud. So I'm like, yeah, maybe the thing you should do is, and then I'm like, what? I'm mad by myself? Like, what the fuck? I get so mad. I'm like, that's not happening right now.
It becomes absurd.
Colin, it's not happening. We're not there. That's not where we are. I keep having to pull myself out of it. It's so weird.
And that's the thing. See, once we become aware of that self-conversation, so, the awareness that we are not our thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? So when you start to become aware that you're observing your thought, you realize that your thoughts are not you. And so, my long process of letting go, a part of that understanding was becoming aware of these thoughts, rehash, saying the same things, and then interrupting them.
Yes.
And then almost joking and saying, no, thank you. I'm not going to go down that road, because if I go down that road, it goes deeper into the abyss of then feeling very, very badly, and then getting angry, and then being judgmental,
and then
all of that.
Forming resentment towards a person
which are based on stories. Much of it is fabrication, because you don't actually know a lot about that person. We think we know our friends. We think we know our parents. There are things right now that everyone who thinks they know their mother or father, there are things that you don't know, that if you saw hidden video of some of what your mother and father have experienced, you would drop to your knees. You would spontaneously combust, because you would realize the pain. Yeah. And there's very few of our parents and people in the world who have not experienced those things. Some people are a lot better at covering it up, stiff upper lip, moving right along, and let's say covering it up with money, with wealth, with success,
material,
and other things, and other people are not. And then how do we treat the people within our culture who are not so... Are we in?
Yep.
So it comes down to a choice for people, and it's a conscious choice that we can make. One is, we either believe that human beings at heart are cooperative, empathetic, beautiful beings, or what we've been told, the story we've been told, which is that we're cooperative, selfish, nasty beings. So if we believe the former, which is that we're beautiful beings, then what follows is that nobody is doing anything on purpose. And it's unconsciousness. And when we become aware of that, it's heartbreaking when we become aware of the ways in which we are dysfunctional and that we are damaging other people.
Yeah.
And then that's where the opportunity comes to constantly shift.
Yeah. Jeez. See, this is why I wanted to talk to you. We have these conversations on the phone. These are like our phone conversations. So we went there.
Sometimes I'm thinking at the end of those conversations, why didn't we just...
Yeah.
There was such good stuff in there. But there's also other stuff in there that probably we shouldn't talk about.
There'd be
so.
like a lot of redacted stuff. Classified.
50 years later, unclassified.
Yeah. Maybe 10. I don't know. Maybe within the next presidency.
Yeah. All kinds of things are afoot. That's for sure.
So, since we were just talking about letting go, let's talk about angry young men.
Mm.
So I know you were an angry young man. You were just talking about it and everything. Like, how do you deal with it? How did you deal with it?
Very poorly. Yeah. I mean, the number of times that I've lost my shit in my life, I mean, it's a lot.
And like publicly, like
oh yeah,
family.
Oh yeah, yeah. Publicly, not just with family.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I was 12 or 13 and we went bowling with my family. So keep in mind that I went to boarding school in England between the age of 6 and 10. So at the age of 6, I was dropped off in a prison-like institution that by definition, especially at that point, there's no love there, there's no affection.
Yeah.
At 6. And when you, anybody who has access to engaging with a 6-year-old, you still see how much that 6-year-old is attached to mom and or dad.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're starting to venture out in the world, but you go out and you come back to the safety of mom and dad. You're doing all of that. So all of a sudden alone, and I didn't see anyone in my family for 3 weeks without contact purposely.
Yeah.
So then it's trial by fire. You have to adjust. So by all accounts, I was a lovely boy, a lovely, gentle boy when I was 6.
Yeah.
And within about a year, and then so when you get there, you have to, one of the famous psychologists on boarding school trauma calls it, you create a strategic survival personality. So
Strategic
survival personality. So, and it really becomes a choice. So I was a soft boy, and then my SSP was I became a bully at the age of 7.
Wow.
And so that became my survival mechanism, and I became angry, and so then when I left when I was 10, and then moved to Canada with my dad and my stepmom, I was an extremely angry boy. And then my parents at the time, God bless them, didn't know what to do with that. A lot of people at that time, kind of therapy and therapy for children or just getting help, or, you know, the reaction would be when I would get angry or upset, it was kind of like, it was like eeks, as opposed to, oh my God, are you okay? What's going on with you?
Yeah,
Why?
like, why so angry?
So yeah, we went to a bowling alley one day, and you know, I threw a gutter ball, and I just completely lost it. Like it's like a 24 alley, you know, lane alley.
It just went off.
And it just, you know, that continued in my existence, like playing squash, everything, because everything became existential. Everything became win or die. So I had to win arguments, I had to be right, and if I was playing squash, which I did for 25 years, I stopped 5 years ago because it just brought out the worst in me. Because if I was winning, everything was fine.
Yeah.
But if I was losing, especially to a person I shouldn't be losing to, it would become a war zone within me. And then this poor guy has come after work, rando dude, in an enclosed space. And then here I am, self-loathing, which is then filtering over to him. And so I became aware of it, and I tried to shift it, but it was 25 years of coming to the squash court and putting out all of my frustrations in that arena. So I just stopped playing. And that was a liberation. When you say, how do you let go? The last day that I played, after I had I behaved terribly on the court, and we came off the court, and as soon as I would come off, I would let it go. And the guy who was a really nice guy that I was playing, so I apologized to him. I
Yeah.
said, really sorry about that.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was affected, poor guy. And
Of
he's
course.
like, man, that wasn't cool.
Oh, really?
And I said, I know. And I went and I showered and I got in the car and I decided I wouldn't play anymore. And that night when I got home, the liberation I felt from letting go of that was just incredible, because it was another forum in which I would play out my lifetime of dysfunction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes a game of dysfunction at some point.
Endless game of dysfunction.
That's
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah, and then you just let it go. And then that has to be a good feeling. I feel that way too when I walk away from certain things. I've gotten a lot better at it now. Career-wise, I'm okay walking away from things. Yeah, it's just the little things. It's always the little things.
It's little things, it's big things, but yeah, little things are huge. So then I stopped playing squash, and then I went to my first sport, which is tennis. But I decided not to play games.
Then what do you...
I just rally.
Oh, okay.
And so I play with a couple of friends. And so I used to feel pressure in showing up for squash games. Like I'm going to be playing a game.
Of course.
And then, so before it, I would have a little bit of anxiety. In the middle of it, there would be whatever is going on. And then at the end of it, if I played on a Friday, and then if I lost and things went badly, it would linger over the weekend. It would affect my life.
Yeah.
So now when I go play tennis, before it, I'm super excited to go play.
Of course.
During it, it doesn't matter if the balls go in and out.
Yeah.
We're just running. We stop in the middle of it. We have a chat.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it's all good.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing of competition, which is very much a part of this ultra masculine patriarchal world which has been built, which has been based off survival of the fittest,
Yes.
and competition and winning and so forth, which is from my position now and my understanding is really completely incorrect, and really sets us up for this binary type existence of win or lose, left or right, and all of that.
Yeah. As soon as you said left and right, yeah.
Yep.
That's exactly win or lose. There's no
nuance. There's no in between.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. Which has now been heightened to stratospheric levels with everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Sensitivity and people taking sides where what someone from the other side says, because they have one position that we don't like or despise, we completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's nothing that person can say, including some things that are really beneficial and useful, and there are truths. And so then we hold ourselves out from each other and take these binary positions.
Yeah.
It's highly problematic.
Yeah, man.
And a recipe for conflict, separation, judgment. This is the kind of thing that led to like the Salem witch trials, where you have, some poor woman, tied up to a stake, and you have people like, like this, and we're kind of there right now, throwing each other under the bus.
Well, the thing is, when you don't wear your mask, you kill my grandma. Okay. So
Right. Right.
That's
well, you went there, huh? Yeah.
That's the witch trial right now. That is the.
Well,
You kill my grandma. Don't worry, my grandma's already dead. Don't
well,
worry about
from one position, that can be seen as true, but
It's not.
but there's a lot more nuance and information.
Again, nuance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Comes
but
back
that's
to
not
that.
allowed,
Mm-hmm.
and because, yeah.
Where were we? Angry young men.
Angry.
There's going to be a lot more angry young men. I can
Oh
tell you
yes,
that
there
much.
are. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Where do you think it stems from? Because there are so many angry young men already. Like, I was super angry, and I guess it always comes from different places, but like, why are there so many angry guys, angry young guys? Right
So
now?
here's the thing: there are also a lot of angry women.
Yeah, probably.
But the angry man, I have been the angry man,
Exactly, yeah.
is so obtrusive and overwhelming because of loud voice and physicality,
Sure.
that there's much more focus on the angry man. There are a lot of angry women. Anger in women has not been as readily allowed because a woman who gets angry is deemed hysterical
Yeah.
and a Karen.
Didn't
Like,
they used
and
to
is,
give him?
and
They
is,
used to give him heroin back in the day.
oh, sure,
They were hysterical?
electroshock therapy, you know,
Yeah.
all of that. And so there is a lot of anger. You know, what is anger? What are all of these reactions? It's confusion, it's disconnection from the heart, it's alienation, it's trauma. It is the manifestation of trauma, which in men has been more allowed to be angry, but women are somehow supposed to suck it up. But like my current partner, Jessie, she is an incredibly lovely and gentle soul.
Yeah.
But you know, she has profound anger in her, all justified, but it doesn't usually have an outlet. It's like it hasn't been acceptable. Yeah. So there's a lot of anger out there, and it's because there's incongruence. Anger is, you know, anger is also gets a bad rap because anger is not bad. What anger reveals, you know what's worse? I mean, we can place judgments on these things.
Yeah.
What's worse than that is apathy and numbness and nothingness. Anger, when it comes up, it is letting you know that there is something wrong. Now,
Yeah.
that
That's true.
does not justify anger towards someone else. That is not exoneration of bad behavior. It is explanation that if I am angry, there is a reason for it. You may not see that reason, you may not agree with that reason, but it is genuine in me why that's coming up.
Yeah.
And when my anger comes up, I don't know about you, there becomes a loss of control. That's the whole thing. It takes over me. And it's like I'm the 6-year-old child
Yeah.
who is like, what is going on here? And I want to talk and I want to say, hello, what's going on? What's happening? But there's not allowed, not allowed. Bottled up, bottled up, bottled up.
Yeah.
And then for me, in my case, exploding out.
Yeah.
And in some people's cases, going in and going in, you know, absorbed.
Yeah. That's more where I go. Like when I get really angry, it's very rare that I would flip out towards somebody. It's almost like I get angry and then there's like 6 dudes inside of my head that just grab the angry guy and they're just like, he holds him down and then he just starts crying.
Well, in a
just
way,
kinda like-
well, in a way, I wish I could have done that in my time, because, you know, I've had trouble crying in my life.
Yeah, I think we talked about
Yeah.
that on the beach, that first conversation we had.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, go into that. Trouble crying.
Well, because that's the vulnerability. Because if there's tears, that is connecting you to your deep vulnerability and your trauma, and that's frightening. It's especially frightening for men because we have been raised in general to not feel pain or make a big deal of pain and feeling sad. It's okay, get up, you're okay, you know, moving right
Yeah.
along, right? And so we have been trained to not respect pain and sadness, and actually being told that, oh, you're not feeling that. You're okay, get up.
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's nothing there. And so the child is thinking, oh no, but I'm feeling pain and
Yeah.
sadness. No, it's okay. You actually don't feel that. So then a lot of men are growing up and they don't understand emotion and feeling because it's been invalidated in them. So they don't actually, they've become disconnected from those feelings. So when those start to come up, they're unfamiliar and they're frightening. And you look at the culture and media and so forth, and you know, what are men? Men are strong, men are powerful, men are rich, you know, men are successful, men are athletic.
Yeah. It's a hard. I think we touched on that, like when you were talking about you're okay. I think we touched on that in the men's group. Like when I had that men's group going on, like the one thing that women will say, I mean, like a mother will say, and a father, is like, big boys don't cry. Like I remember seeing that in the mall,
Yep.
and then it made the kid like suppress that,
Yep.
and he stopped crying. And it's like, how much damage does that do? Like unknowingly
Oh,
to us?
it's
Yeah.
devastating.
And it's true because in like, yeah, like even, yeah,
That men's group,
how
uh,
many people?
that first meeting, we had 9 people. I knew you a little bit.
Yeah,
I knew one other guy a little bit more.
yeah.
And there were 9 of us, 5 guys I didn't know at all.
Mm-hmm.
A real random selection, and including, the guys. It was quite a wide spectrum
Yeah, it was.
of men in there. And it was wild because 2 guys introduced first. I had just within 2 months, I had separated from my wife
Yeah.
of 16 years. So all of that was very raw in me. And so the first 2 guys introduced themselves, and then it got to me, and then I was emotional.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that opened the door. And then as we went around,
Everybody got
the
emotional.
there was more emotion, and then one of the guys said,
He was crying before we even got to him.
right.
Yeah.
And so that guy ended up saying, I've tried to kill myself in the last 3 months. And then 2 of the remaining 3 guys,
I think in total it was like 4 had
It was-
like
it-
contemplated it.
it was 4, and I know that 2 other guys
Mm.
have contemplated and thought about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So I think that's what's misunderstood out in the culture, and especially women don't understand the incredible frailty and vulnerability in men,
yeah.
who, many of whom don't feel that they have a forum and a place to let out these
Yeah.
feelings, and are suffering in private, but then out in public, often it presents itself as anger and so forth, and then people will say, oh, that guy's an asshole, not realizing that the reason for that anger is because he's in pain.
Yeah.
And that, suicide, the highest rate of suicide is within men, something like 35 to 55.
Yeah, right
So-
around that time
yeah.
where you're supposed to have your life together,
Right.
supposedly, and you're supposed to have it all together, and the men you saw when you were younger at that age had it all together, unknowingly that they didn't
Yeah.
actually, so you're now striving towards this imperfection that never existed.
So that was a revelation for me, and it actually further inspired me to keep going with Empathy Rising, because I felt, and what's going to be happening with what's happening in the world now, is there are more and more men who these emotions and fears and anxieties, which so many of us have been able to hide behind in our day-to-day lives,
Yeah.
but now in this 4 months where for a bunch of men life has stopped and they've suddenly had time to think and feel, and these things that
Assess.
come up,
Yeah.
is that more and more men are going to be needing help
Yep.
to discern these feelings and to integrate them, and to be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel these things. And in fact, it's required for you to arrive at some sort of balance for the rest of your life, where your life will make sense. These are the things that now you're encouraged to engage with. And if you bottle those up, if you force them down, the consequences are dire, either through physical illness, which you will get, or through dysfunctional relationships and engagement with the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. That's a lot. It's a lot to think about, all this stuff. But that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. And that's why I was saying to you before that I want to start that men's group again, because conversations like this are so needed. And like you're saying, especially around this time. Like, I think the Big Brother program might have to, like, pull out all the older gentlemen, like, back into the draft. Like, might have to draft and be like, you need, we have a 31-year-old for you that needs some time, you know? Because there's a lot of guys that are, I guess I want to say, like, disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to see. Like, I was lucky because, like, I do my own little creative thing, so I never stopped. But other people, I know some people that haven't left the house for, like, almost 4 months.
I mean, that's devastating. It's
Horrible.
yeah.
My friend was in that. He was actually in Nova Scotia, and he had a situation with his father was here with, like, cancer, like, really, really bad, and, like, he was just stuck there and stuck inside, like, and he just couldn't do anything. Couldn't go see his. I had two friends that actually had that happen. Another friend of mine, he was stuck where he was, and he couldn't come see his father on his deathbed. It's just like,
It's tragic. It's absolutely devastating.
Man.
But with all of this kind of insanity that's happening, it's also, I mean, for me, from my reading of the situation, it's auguring a massive shift and the evolution of consciousness. And unfortunately, we're going to have to go through some tough times, but then things are going to be brought forth and there's going to be illumination, which all at once is going to be, in some cases, shocking, but it's also going to open the way for humanity to start living quite differently.
yeah, like I'm gonna learn how to hunt. That's what I'm doing. I'm learning how to hunt. I want chickens. I want farmland. I want to grow stuff. Like,
Yep.
I want to become sustainable now. After seeing this and almost getting denied in the grocery stores and shit, who knows where that goes, you know? So it would be best to know how to do that shit yourself.
Well, we don't know how to do anything.
Nothing.
We're hooped. You know, there's a history, I alluded to it earlier, that the history that we have been told by traditional archaeology, long story short, is bullshit. If I may put it that frankly. Someone who's done incredible work on that front is Graham Hancock, if people want to look at his work.
Yes.
But there is plenty of evidence that there was advanced civilization living on this planet 12, 13,000 years ago. There's plenty of evidence. And why am I bringing that up?
I don't know.
Oh,
Graham
man.
Hancock, archaeology, it being bullshit, the world.
I think that's what threw me off that I said that. And I enjoyed it too much. Why did I bring up Graham Hancock?
Graham Hancock, he's amazing, man. And I fully believe that there were advanced civilizations that long ago. It's just that I think...
Oh, here it is. Let me tell you what I thought of
What?
it. Sorry. So the theory goes, and there is a lot of evidence for it, that sections of an asteroid hit the planet at that time.
Yeah.
So there was Atlantis.
Yes.
And there was these advanced civilizations, more advanced technologically than we are now.
Right now. Yep.
And there is plenty of evidence for that. And the world, tidal waves, the world was destroyed, except for who survives in that situation when that kind of shit hits the fan. It is the indigenous people who are in the jungle. They are the ones who survived. The advanced civilizations got wiped out because, like you and I, if we had to come up with food right now, there's 2 to 3 days of food in the food terminal in Toronto where we are.
Yeah.
If things go sideways, it's going to be chaos in the city. There's going to be no food, and that's where things become very problematic with survival and people.
Yep.
But if that happens, the people who are going to be okay, who may not even know what's happened, are the people in the Amazon who life goes on. But so science and all of those advancements went by the wayside because the people who survived and thrived were more of the hunter-gatherers and so forth. So life began again at that point and built, and then we went on a new trajectory, but we've arrived at the same point because this is a bit of conjecture, is that one of the reasons that happened, one can say, oh, well, an asteroid hit, that just happened. But, we attract what happens. And it's that arrogance and exactly what we're seeing now was what had developed at that point. And so that thing came along for a reset.
I do agree with that.
So I'm hoping that an asteroid or something as cataclysmic is not required this time around.
No, I hope not.
But it's hard to imagine a massive shift happening without some big things coming down the pike, and I think that's happening soon.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, people have been referring to it as a shift happening, the shift, but Yeah, it's hard to tell where things are gonna go, but they're going.
Well,
Like
it's
wherever it's rolling, it's rolling.
yeah.
So
I mean, it's one of two
uh,
things. We're either headed for a shift that's headed for somewhere positive, or we're maybe headed for a 1984 type situation, which
yeah,
I don't think most people are seeing. But the hallmarks are all there
yeah,
for that trajectory, unless it's interrupted. So
yeah,
we'll have to see what the next. I think in the next few months, some things are going to happen which are going to
yeah.
break this all open. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure. Where was I? Was I at Angry Young Men? Nah, we went through that. Oh, how can they deal with it in a healthy way? The anger. Like, what healthy ways have you learned to like deal with anger?
I kind of dealt with it on my own, and I had some really incredible friends.
Okay.
You know,
Support system.
yeah, and you know, when I was younger, I went through a psychedelic phase and
Of course.
acid, and that took me very deep and really helped to open up the doors of perception,
Oh, did
you
it
know,
really?
if you will,
Good.
and to open up my horizons because I was really working within some very tight parameters of what life was.
Anger narrows everything.
Oh, anger, all of that, trauma that presents itself as dysfunction is a complete narrowing.
Yeah.
Everything becomes myopic,
Yeah.
and then our blind spots are huge, and we genuinely can't see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but as far as dealing with it, I dealt with it very poorly, and because there wasn't that help and you know, around. But what I would suggest to men or women is often that help is not available within family because what you have has come through that patterning, which is also generational. But to seek out, um, first of all, to search within. That's the first and foremost. Is it's a non-stop journey within because the answers are actually only within here.
Yeah.
But I think it is beneficial to find outside assistance, understanding, and we keep seeing it over and over. There are no gurus. There are no, the gurus keep falling left and right. Um,
That
but
is true.
but everyone there's I mean everyone has something to offer. But to keep engaging, I don't believe that there's any one tradition or path to go down.
Yeah.
You take something from here, take a piece from there. Um, you might meet someone who's becomes a friend, and you're kind of in the same spot, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, I see you, and then
Yeah,
you help
yeah.
each other along.
A little bit.
That friendship may be a lifetime, or after 6 years, you may diverge, and you just. But in the end, everything it becomes a mirror for the inward journey, because that's where the answers are.
Yeah.
So it's a constant out and in, out and in. And it's really, I think, for most people, an arduous process. There is no shortcut. And there's a lot of modalities and things that are out there which appear to provide some good systems and solutions.
Okay.
But the danger of that ends up often being a spiritual bypass where then you think you figured it out because you're doing this, and this.
Yeah.
But if you haven't dealt with the underlying, that will find its way to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm noticing too. That's what I'm noticing. Somebody actually helped me with it because when I was a kid, when I was like 8, I got assaulted by this guy. He's like a grown man, and somebody was. I was interviewing this guy Vesa, this artist, on another podcast, Talking Mush, and he was like afterwards, off camera, he was like, "Let's." He's like, "There's an exercise I learned, just reframing situations," and like he made me like think about the situation, and then like make it black and white, and then like add clown music to it, and then do something else to it, like just make it very like trying to break it down and make it not as serious of a
So it
situation.
loses its charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can actually just look at it for what it is and not be so scared
cool.
by its brightness of it all. And that actually helped for a little bit. But then I started thinking about beating the shit out of the guy, and I was like,
Yeah.
fuck. I started smiling. He's like, why are you smiling? I'm like, I'm thinking of kicking the shit out of the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's just like, he's like, well, keep working at it. But it did help. Like right away, for the first time when I added the clown music, I was able to actually like look at it.
Just to be able to look at things differently.
Yeah.
You know, we have the stories that we have told ourselves and we've been told, and it's like these stories have taken on a solidity as if they're fact.
Yeah.
And it's like just to be able to look at that situation from a different angle opens things up.
Yeah.
And because we often think we know the story, we barely know our own story, let alone someone else's story. But you know, once we become more flexible with that, and always reminding ourselves that we know much less about that situation than we know. So everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt. You know, we think we see one reaction from someone and we're like, oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah,
That's you. And it's like, no, there's a lot more complexity to that. And we're just ready to throw people under the bus because they fulfill some, you know.
Yeah. Joe Rogan often says after he had kids, he was able to look at that person who's an asshole and be like, you were a baby once. And at some point you got fucked up by somebody, something happened to you on the way to becoming an adult, and now you're this.
Oh, dude, parenthood, I have a 13-year-old girl,
Yeah.
has been the ultimate teacher for me. My ex is the other massive teacher in my life. She's a wonderful woman. We didn't make it. We tried really hard.
Yeah.
But my child, and of course continues to be, it is the never-ending mirror, which is just sometimes devastating to look into.
The gift that keeps on giving.
And you know, but it is a gift because the realization I had when she was around 2, maybe even 1 or 2, is that the way that I was engaging with people, I would always allow myself an out. So let's say we get into a little disagreement or argument or you know, whatever, is that I would create justification for my bad behavior by focusing on something you've done.
Of course.
Which really takes the cake. Like,
Yeah.
that's unacceptable. I mean, if he hadn't done that, that's fine. And that's why I got angry.
Yeah.
I mean, if he hadn't done that. And so then I had a child. And of course, I was doing the same thing with a 1 and 2-year-old. which I became aware of the absurdity of engaging with that kind of patterning. And so that started to help me break that with the world.
That's so
and to reframe that equation that I would create to exonerate myself, or not to exonerate myself, because I would always still feel such shame and guilt and humiliation for my behavior, but I'd get to mitigate it, you know,
based on the person.
by shifting some of the blame, all of which to say, again, whatever that interaction was, including with my child, is a co-creation. Now, one can say a 2-year-old child, that's not a co-creation, but it is, because she is her own sovereign being. She has her own destiny. She is a light being housed within this physical body.
Yeah.
She has her own life and agenda.
Yeah.
And to underestimate our children, we do at our own peril. and what they're here for, regardless of what we think they're here for or what they should be doing.
That's crazy. You mean my kids aren't going to just do what I say?
Well, they might. Mine, I am blessed with a child who is completely her own being.
Yeah, she really is.
Yeah.
Last time I saw her, she had like half her head shaved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is fierce, and she gets a lot of her fierceness. She comes by it honestly.
Yeah, right.
So I can't say anything to that. It's like, yeah, there it is. There's the mirror,
There's
right?
my energetic match.
Yeah, exactly.
That's yeah. Yeah, let's go to that. Let's go to that. I had that somewhere. Yeah,
What,
life after.
parenting?
No, well, life
Life
after marriage and just fatherhood, I guess. Like, how is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredibly challenging to go from being with someone who I thought I'd be with for the rest of my life. Again, a wonderful person, and then and then to get to the point of realizing, wow, we're very far away from each other, and all of the strides we had made, that there were some fundamental things that we could not get past.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a psychologist named Alain de Botton,
Okay.
and he's an interesting guy. But one of the things he said, I watched a YouTube on him a couple of years ago. Actually, maybe 3 years ago, before my separation, and
Okay.
he said that the first major relationship that you end up having invariably becomes a manifestation of your personal and generational trauma,
Yeah.
and you've attracted someone who is an energetic match for you, and who all of those things that you have within you, they have within their lineage. And it could be that her father has similarities to me, which of course there were,
Yeah.
and so forth. And so it's incredibly challenging, because then you are trying to help each other work out your fucked upness. But while you're doing that,
Yeah.
all of that keeps coming up.
Of course.
And so that's why first marriages and long-term relationships often don't last, because that is the most challenging work. You are working to heal the trauma, your trauma, and that of your entire lineage, which is housed in you, both energetically, and as now we know with epigenetics, generationally.
Yeah. Epigenetics is a big thing.
So then, you know, separation, 11-year-old child, and then 11-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Makes more sense, all things being equal, to be with her mom.
Of course. Yeah.
So then, you know, my greatest fear in separation, because we had almost split up 4 years before that,
Okay.
my greatest fear was in not seeing my child every day, who I obviously adore. And of course, that not only has come to pass, it's really the most challenging thing in my day-to-day life, which is always in the back of my mind, that I'm not getting to see my child every day. And now I'm in Toronto and she's in Barrie with my ex there.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging. But you talked about letting go and surrender. This is the ultimate in surrender for me, which is surrendering to the long game and the big picture, and in not making a big deal about that and causing issues because of the feelings of shaft I have of not being with my child. When I see my child, not bringing that into the proceedings, because good things don't come of that. Yeah.
True.
So it's been really hard.
Yeah, that would be hard. See, that's the thing that I think of. Even as you're saying, like, the person that you thought you'd be with the rest of your life, like, I feel like I've met that person, and that's such a hard thing even right now to fathom and then deal with. Like, how did you actually deal with that happening?
We all deal with it, right? I mean, one of the things with humanity is we're outrageously resilient. Now, resilience is a wonderful characteristic, but it's also very wearing, because if you're constantly having to be in resilience, your body and your mind get broken down over time. With that. And so I handled it like everyone else, because you have to, and you have no choice, and you do the best with it.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we tend to think that our pain and trauma and what we're going through is special. It's not special. A large percentage of people you meet, if you heard their full story, you would say, oh, yeah, it's, yeah. So You do it because you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have to, I guess. One of the many hurdles, trials, chapters of life. Yeah, how'd you get through it? And then moving on with life. Like, how has that been? Moving on.
Well,
past all
I've been
that.
very fortunate in that I met an incredible woman who I think I was ready for, with the feelings and the life that I was hoping would happen with my ex,
Yeah.
but it didn't want to happen.
Yeah.
The ways in which I always wanted to be,
Yeah.
that were hard to be within my previous relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I'm now getting to be that, and with a lot of the dysfunctions and those energies that were within my relationship with my ex simply don't exist. And that lets me know that however difficult things have been and continue to be, that all of the work I've done, 31 years of self-healing work, things can get better, and they do get better. It's very, very challenging and it's hard work,
Yeah.
but I can see in the place I'm in that it was really worth it.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fortunate, because if that wouldn't have happened, I think I'd be having a tough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. It's hard to imagine for me. Very hard to put myself in that situation and what I would do. Yeah.
Well, you don't know. That's the thing. I mean, we can conjecture,
Obviously.
we can hypothesize,
I
but
just feel like I'd break down, but obviously I wouldn't die. I'd get through it, but
we also don't know. We end up. That's the whole thing of life. You see, like, you're creating a story
yeah.
that has no basis
Yeah.
in reality, because we only know once we're actually in it
Yeah.
how we're going to react, and often we can surprise ourselves. We can be much stronger, more ingenious, more intuitive than we can ever imagine, because that's actually what we all are.
Yeah.
Underneath the pain and the trauma, we are a glorious, majestic, lovely, empathetic, compassionate, intelligent, intuitive beings.
Yeah, that can handle more than
Oh,
you
yeah.
think. Jordan Peterson talks about that. Like you can handle much more than you think you can. You can rise to the occasion. He's like, but you just have to do it. You just have to actually. I guess it's exactly what you're saying. You won't know until you're in it.
Yep.
You don't know if you can rise to the occasion until you actually.
And
do
you don't have to do it. Some people don't.
And that's the thing.
There's no judgment on that. That's the thing. We have to allow every human to live exactly as they wish, and to die exactly as they wish, without judgment. Because life is far beyond the parameters of this human life,
Yeah.
that we keep being told that we should focus on that. There's a lot more going on out in the universe, which the way that we access that is to connect with our heart and our deep intuition.
Yeah.
And when we don't, that's where the confusion lies. Because why are we confused? Why are we unhappy? Well, if all of this fear and anxiety was normal, well, we'd all just be used to it. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But we keep resisting it because it's not actually who we are and what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I was experiencing that. Before all this happened, I was experiencing that so heavily. So much anxiety. And that's not usually a feeling that I get as a person in general. Every time I sat down to edit anything or do anything technical, just this crazy anxiety, sweaty hands. Like, my hands never
Yeah.
sweat. Sweaty hands, everything. And then I just started doing stuff that I actually wanted to do. And then it went away.
That is one of the recipes, but the way that you know what you want to do is by, again, connecting with the essence of who you are, because that's where the
Exactly
deep intuition and the intelligence comes from, to find out actually who you are. And, I've gone and done Vision Quest with the indigenous people in Manitoba. I did it 2 years in a row. I did it last May and the May before.
Wow.
So for the indigenous people, for a lot of the indigenous people,
Yeah.
there is a rite of passage for men. It's supposed to be for young men. So when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, you're supposed to go on a vision quest. And the vision quest is you go to the land and you sit with the land on your own for 3, 4, 7 days. And in most cases, you don't drink water and you have no food. So it was 3.5 days, no food, no water, camping alone and doing nothing. You're not writing, you're not playing music. You're just there to sit with Mother Earth and to, because for the indigenous people, man is initiated by woman and the feminine. But of course, the feminine in this patriarchal 4,000 years has been subjugated. And so the reason why you don't eat and you don't drink the water is to appreciate the bounty of Mother Earth and the importance of the water and the sustenance. And you sit to connect in that way. Right? So why did I bring up the vision? Oh, and what you're there for is to have your vision, to find out who you are. Because once you connect to the essence of who you are, that's when you connect into your intuition and your deep intelligence. And that's when all of a sudden things can come in that you hadn't thought of. You know, there are people out there who have no idea, because they haven't engaged with that within themselves, that there is something they could and maybe should be doing out in the world, which is actually who they are and what they're really, really good at. Right?
Yeah. That's a big thing to figure out. I always say that I think the spirit is like the mediator between you and the soul. And like your soul's like the highest potential of what you are, and it just gets news back from what you should do. And when you're doing shit you're not supposed to do, it goes back and then that's when you get those uneasy feelings.
Right.
And it doesn't feel right, and it's because it's like something's telling you like, no, that's not
the
what
uneasy
we're supposed to
feeling is message.
do.
If you are unhappy, if you are confused, that's something to look at without judgment.
Exactly.
And that thing you described, there is a channel there. And it's and for most of us it's blocked. So once we start to unblock that, that's when we start to get life.
You start to get in tune. Like I've been saying ever since I stopped eating gluten and dairy, I'm like, your body's like an antenna. And like the cleaner you keep it throughout, like, you know, whether it's food and what you take in sensory wise and everything, the cleaner it is, like the more you can actually receive and send out. And like it just gets clearer and clearer.
Can you pass me the water bottle there?
Of course.
I went through mine.
Jeez.
I'm talking too much, so I get a dry throat. That's probably a message that I should stop talking so much, which there are people in my life who would say, yes, you're talking too much.
No, that's why I wanted to talk to you. I'm like, this guy can talk.
Great.
You always need somebody that can talk. It's good. We've been talking way longer than we've been reading and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the way we learn.
No doubt.
That's the way I learn it.
And then beyond the talking, again, we get locked into talking. You know, what we have, what we are able to do, which seems like fantasy, is also telepathy.
Yes.
Right? Animals have that. We are an animal.
I'm convinced they do.
When you see 1,000 birds flying in formation and then doing this and that and whatever, they're not telepathically completely aligned and connected. And we're able to do that. We know that. We feel each other in communication. Often words are not required.
Definitely.
But then we because we've become focused on the mind, and the mind creates words, whereas the heart creates feelings and but most of us are not connected to that. So we get lost in the closed loop of the left brain, the logical linear left brain, and it becomes like we think we are dealing with all the information, but you know, the heart and the brain, research is very, very clear. They are connected. They are connected by the vagus nerve, and information travels between the heart and the brain.
Gut, heart, and brain.
What's amazing is more information travels from the heart to the brain than the other way around.
Of course.
But the way we live, it's as if it's the other way around.
Yeah, that's what we're taught to think, because this is where the thinking happens. But in reality, I think it's a lot here, because
Yeah.
it's when my gut was messed up, my mind was messed up
Mhm.
completely.
Well, this is
And
another
my-
brain.
Exactly.
There's neurons here. There's dopamine
Neurons
here.
here, like it's all connected. So it's cool to think about in that way. Really cool to think about. And people are starting to learn more about it. And
Well,
I wonder, going like forward, how many mental conditions are gonna end up being solved because of people's guts and like what's going
And
on
people
there,
connecting
and
with
their heart. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I wonder how much you can change,
Oh, a lot.
because I know within myself I've changed so much.
Well, we keep being this system, our medical system, this very linear, hierarchical, institutional system.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind that, every one of our institutions is the exclusive creation of men. Every single one of them.
That's true.
And so what we have been told, including with our medical system, is that understanding and...
Go ahead.
You're all good. You're all
Yeah,
good.
yeah, don't worry
That
about it. It's good.
Back in action.
Oh.
Are we recording?
Yep.
Yep.
Everything's there.
Where were we?
Where were you?
How do we...
Self-awareness, not fighting what doesn't want you.
Right. So it's that when we're fighting, that is actually a gift, because that tells us that something is amiss. And so, but what we tend to do is that when we're in that fighting mode with ourselves or otherwise, we want to push that away.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing that's happening because it's making me feel bad, it's making someone else feel bad, it's causing problems.
Yeah.
And so there becomes an avoidance and then a denial and maybe a revisionist history around what went down.
Yeah.
And then nothing to see here, moving right along, and then you've forgotten it.
Yeah.
And the more that we do that, the more the universe will bring back that exact scenario in a slightly different form.
Yeah.
And it's when we start to make the connection that those repeated things that keep happening, once we start to make the connection between those and realize what is similar about them, that's when we can start to see it coming. And it almost becomes like slow-mo. It almost becomes where you're like a supreme athlete, where the
Everything
game slows down.
Yeah.
And like I can see the anger coming, right? And then if I can see it, I can maybe do something about it. Because if I don't, I'm going to be taken over.
Yeah.
And or I'm going to go down as someone who's anxious or gets sad or depressed.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's the tunnel and you're lost and it's going, as opposed to being able to see it coming. And then that's where it gets into maturity. And what do you do in that circumstance? So one thing you can do, Abraham Hicks is great for this, is to go general. So what does it mean to go general? It means to get away from the specific of that thing, because what we tend to do is get more specific.
Oh, of
So for
course.
example, if I'm in something with you and you're not getting it,
Yeah.
right? If I just say this one more thing, oh no, wait a minute, one more thing, you'll go, oh, Bard, oh, now I get it. You're totally right, which never happens
I've never had it.
ever. It
No,
never happens
I've never had
because
that.
once we're in that kind of engagement, our hackles are up, our defenses are up, yeah, and we are not going to, because we're feeling vulnerable and attacked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but once we start to get to a point which requires a lot of evolution, and I still fail at it all the time, but I'm also succeeding way more than I ever have, you can then move things this way. So get away from the specific,
Yeah.
shift the situation. If you're talking with someone, you can say, give me a sec. It's okay. You can go take 10 minutes, you can call them back, you can walk out of the room, you can go do 5 minutes of deep breathing, get yourself centered, understanding that that thing that was coming up in me was not because of you.
Yeah.
Again, to bring it back, why is this coming up in me? Yes, I want to say that that person triggered me, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
If I'm getting overexcited about it, it's because something is coming up in me.
Yeah.
And if I am then going to allow myself to then double down on that, disrespect that person, not take care of their heart, then the problem becomes mine.
Yeah.
And so go general. And sometimes that means go and do something you love. Go and do something that brings you joy. Go and listen to a piece of music. Go have a chocolate bar. Something, go take a couple of tokes. Whatever it is that's going to take you out of that trajectory that's like a train, a runaway train that is going to take you, to catastrophe.
Yeah.
Shift that. And the more that you start to, for that to slow down, the end game of that, there is no end game, but you'll know what I mean, is that when I see that happening, then I'm actually able to do that within the conversation and to see where I'm going and to shift gears and to understand that then, for me now, when I'm engaging with you, let's say, and we're having a conversation, and I'm doing this with any human, this is high-level humaning is what I call it. It's very challenging. It's that
of course.
we're having a conversation. Let's say I don't even know you. We've met, and we suddenly connect on a point. Oh, yeah, blah, 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 whatever. And then, oh, that's so nice and whatever. But then something comes up in which suddenly...
Politics.
Or just whatever. But I see a boundary go up. And I see that there's a fear and a something. So advanced humaning for me is to recognize that and then to not violate that boundary.
Yeah.
But what I have done in the past and for my life is to think, I have the answer here. Your boundary, it's going to be okay. I'm going to violate it. You're going to feel like shit, but I'm going to give you a piece of information that's critical, that if I just give it to you, it's going to justify the fact that I violated your boundary and so forth. And that, but if I just give you this piece of information, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Instead of what I try to do now is that when I feel that is to then back off, change the subject. Go, that person at that point is not receptive to anything I have to say whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the best that I can do, if advanced humaning is available, is to plant a seed that is very subtle, that may come to fruition 6 months or 5 years or 10 years down the road for that person, because it requires another 6 or 7 or 50 times where that same message goes through for that person to be able to let that in. Yeah.
True.
I mean, this is...
Yeah, it goes back to the mirror thing, right? Everybody's a mirror. So it's like one person gives you a little bit of that thing you need to hear. Okay, he didn't take it. All right. Whether it's spirit and soul channeling it, they're like, okay, he needs to hear it again. Okay, another person. Okay, make it someone he really respects. Okay, now make it a random person. It's like it just keeps coming, and then finally you're just like, you know what? I should probably...
And here's the thing. When you engage in that way, with respect and compassion and non-judgment, very, very challenging, that is actually the thing that is the most powerful piece of information that you can provide for the other human being. Because you have not sacrificed that for this. And the more of that we do with each other, the more trust that gets built. Yeah.
So, my last question.
Yes.
It's the funny. Why no more debates? Because that's been like a new philosophy, I think, over the last 2 years.
What,
for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, when we were talking on the phone, and I said, I'm just not up for debate anymore, and it's related to what we were talking about. So, debate where someone has a different position, it ends up invariably being counterproductive. If we are open in what we're discussing, and it's respectful, and we're taking care of each other's hearts.
It's like a real debate. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, but even we might have different positions.
Yes.
But we consider each other's positions.
Yeah.
But if that's not available, then if you're not, if I see that you are, for your good reasons,
Yeah.
without judgment, not open to what I'm saying, and that there is nothing I can say that's going to convince you, because A, either you're not ready,
Yep.
or B, that I am wrong, then it's better to not have that debate and engagement, because that's where you risk constant violation of boundaries. And then as soon as you violate my boundary, I cannot even hear what you're saying. Even
Yeah.
if, you know, in that place where then we get into a place of fear and this, even if, I mean, someone who we respected more than anyone else, we would just not be open.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's fruitless and it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not interested in debate. I don't want to, if things go in a way where, I don't know, my small following becomes a little bit bigger,
Yeah.
and then somebody, you know, like you see these things like Jordan Peterson against, you know, Slavoj Žižek, and they sit
Yeah.
on a stage.
Yeah.
I am completely uninterested in that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I'm uninterested in that, and I create these things on my blog and on Facebook, these little ditties, these little morsels of thought and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
One of them that I wrote recently said, you know, we're living within such tight parameters that we think that there is a huge difference between communism, fascism, and capitalism. And, you know, so you'll have people sitting on stage debating this as if they are on the far of this side of human engagement and on this side. And for me, there is so much more.
Yeah.
Those are really mind-based. And actually, when you look at the history
Yeah.
of the end game of all of those philosophies, the end game is power concentrated in the hands of very few people, with the people either being slaves with a bludgeon over their head or kind of being slaves within a situation in which they have been led to believe they're free.
Yeah.
So really, it's it limits the conversation. So, you know, I'm not interested in. If you don't agree with me, cool.
Yeah.
If you think I'm an idiot and what I'm saying is ridiculous, that's cool. We don't need to debate that.
Yeah.
If you're
True.
if
That's
you're
so true.
if you're within the if we're in the vicinity of each other, we can then play with the nuance that's between us. But if we're further apart, there's really no point.
Yeah.
Without it become acrimonious and you know, finger pointing and
Disrespectful.
disrespectful.
Toxic.
Yeah.
That's how
Toxic.
that is what I've taken on with social media. There's no more me going back and forth with people on social media.
Pointless.
Like, if you don't like
Same.
something, like I posted some film I made, and the thumbnail had like a certain font because I wanted to stand out. Somebody's like, "Oh, that font," and I'm just like, "All right. Whatever. I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't care. Doesn't matter."
But
I'm not going into that with them.
Yeah,
Like,
because one of the things we do to each other is we'll focus on one or two things, and then that will mean that you are worthless.
yes.
I mean, you said and did this and this, you cannot be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So you have nothing of value to offer.
Yeah.
And that's the whole left-right thing that we're in, which is the binariness of this rational patriarchy, which we've had for 250 years,
Yeah.
and which pushes us into these binary positions.
Yeah. All right. I think that's
Is that good?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to do an hour and a half. We're at an hour and 40, and it was
Alright.
all good stuff.
Yay.
That's why I like talking with you, man. It's always an enlightening conversation. Always.
Well, and likewise, it's always a pleasure
Yeah.
to chat
Hopefully,
with you.
today I was listening to Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell, and when I typed it in, a dozen episodes came up from like episode 200 to like 1500. So he's been on it over and over and over again.
Right.
And that's what I hope to replicate with you, because every single time it's a very, very good conversation. And I think it's always good for young men who only know so many ways of being to hear a different type of man and the way that he thinks and the way that he is, and just so they know that there's other avenues.
Yeah, I just want to say finally to that, that really for the first time in my life, in the last 2 years, I'm feeling joy.
Yeah.
It's not an intellectual joy. It's not a theoretical joy that I've read about.
Yeah.
So in the engaging with my heart, there's joy, there's silliness. I'm actually really silly. Very few people who've known me in my life know how silly I am,
Yeah.
and how I like to have fun and all of those things, you know, because we've been told as a man, you know, you do this, you behave like this,
Of
and
course.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so, oh man, there's so much more available to
Yeah.
us, and the variety is huge. We are all so different, and there's incredible opportunity for real diversity
Yeah.
to come to the fore. And I think that's what's at hand in the shift that's coming. So it's very exciting.
Yep. And I guess we'll say last as we leave, where we go one, we go all.
I didn't know that was coming. That's good. But it's true. It's totally true.
And I felt